Folks, big news today out of Washington, D.C. The Department of Justice filing civil rights charges against 4 Louisville police officers over the drug raid that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. The charges filed today are another effort to hold law enforcement accountable for the killing of the 26-year-old medical worker after one of the officers was acquitted of state charges earlier this year. We're going to show you in a moment the announcement from Attorney General Merrick Garland as well as Kristen Clarke, who heads the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Attorney Ben Crump is about to hop onto a plane right now to fly to Las Vegas, where he and I will be together for a screening of his documentary on Netflix. Ben, I know you're about to hop on this plane. Just share with us just your initial thoughts of this decision by the Department of Justice to hold these cops accountable. This is a huge, huge decision.
Roland Martin is historic in every sense of the word. Kristen Clarke, the first black woman to lead the Civil Rights Department, if you're keeping count, she made sure she got guilty verdict in the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis of the police. She got a guilty verdict of the lynch mob that lynched Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And today she got a guilty plea and indictments against the officers who executed Breonna Taylor. So this sister, I believe, as I said at the press conference, is doing as much in the way of civil rights as any other Justice Department has done, I believe, since Bobby Kennedy during the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King and Congressman John Lewis.
And you're right. Look, we've talked about numerous times how the White House is not really focusing on the work that they are doing, the number of corrections officers who they have tried, who they've convicted, the hate crimes as well. A lot of activity going on there. But so many people, so many activists, they were demanding justice for Breonna. Didn't happen on the state level. The Kentucky Attorney General, he, of course, did not want to pursue charges. But this is also why voting matters for this Department of Justice to step in and say there's enough evidence. Remember, it was former Attorney General Eric Holder who said there was a very high bar to try someone for civil rights violations. They believe this DOJ, they have met those that requirement.
Exactly, Roland. And we have to note that this is the first time in history that the federal government has charged police officers for killing a black woman. I mean, you read those charges, you have willful deprivation of Breonna's constitutional rights that led to her death, that can land these officers in prison for life. And that is so significant when we talk about the value of black women. I know my co-counsel, Anita Baker, Tamika Mallory, for Untold Freedom, Monique Preston, all of us just talk for a moment about what this means for black women in America today.
Absolutely. Now, Ben, I know you got to catch a flight right now, so I'm going to see you in a few hours here in Las Vegas. You're going to be talking more with all the journalists here assembled, not only about your documentary, but also having a media availability to discuss this case as well. So I'll see you in a few hours. Safe flight.
Thank you, Roland. And we'll talk about Breonna Ayers in Georgia, Breonna Greer in Georgia.
All right. Indeed. All right. I certainly appreciate it, Ben. Thanks a lot. Folks, during this announcement, Attorney General Merrick Garland and Kristen Clarke of the Civil Rights Division said Breonna Taylor should be alive today.
We allege that the defendants knew their actions in falsifying the affidavit could create a dangerous situation, and we allege these unlawful acts resulted in Ms. Taylor's death. The charges announced today also allege that the officers responsible for falsifying the affidavit that led to the search took steps to cover up their unlawful conduct after Ms. Taylor was killed. We allege that defendants Jaynes and Goodlett conspired to knowingly falsify an investigative document that was created after Ms. Taylor's death. We also allege that they conspired to mislead federal, state, and local authorities who were investigating the incident. For example, we allege that in May 2020, those two defendants met in a garage where they agreed to tell investigators a false story. The indictment separately alleges that defendant Meany lied to the FBI during its investigation of this.
As Attorney General Garland just stated, today's indictments allege that Louisville Police Detective Joshua Jaynes and Sergeant Kyle Meany drafted and approved what they knew was a false affidavit to support a search warrant for Ms. Taylor's home. That false affidavit set in motion events that led to Ms. Taylor's death when other LMPD officers executed that warrant. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution ensures that people are subject to searches only when there is probable cause supporting a search warrant. Falsified warrants create unnecessary hazards for the public and for the police, who rely on facts that fellow officers report in carrying out their public duties. The indictment alleges that by preparing a false affidavit to secure a search warrant for Breonna Taylor's homes, defendants Jaynes and Meany willfully deprived.
Joining me now, Tamika Mallory, co-founder of Untold Freedom, Somil Trivedi, senior staff attorney for Criminal Law Reform Project, the ACLU. Glad to have both of you with us. Tamika, first of all, y'all spent a whole lot of time in Louisville on the ground, working with Breonna Taylor's family, rallying folks there, demanding justice. Your thoughts on today's DOJ decision?
Today's an incredible day. It's validation for us that we were not crazy, that we are not crazy, and that Breonna Taylor, her life mattered, and it matters still today. Roland, at some point you were probably the only person willing to continue to keep the coverage of what we were doing here in Louisville alive. There were days when we didn't have cameras, we didn't have people out here covering our work, but we're very committed
For Breonna.
Having some issues with Tamika's audio. Let's get that taken care of. Somil, I want to go to you. When you go through these charges, Somil, they are showing, and we talk about this all the time, what happens when cops lie.
That's right. Thanks for having me. And I'm glad you showed the comments from the Attorney General and from Clarke laying out not just the crime, but the cover-up. You know, we say it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. Here it is both the crime and the cover-up. Cops lying to cover up for their misdeeds is a national epidemic, and this case is emblematic of that epidemic. They lied to get the warrant, they lied about shooting her, and they lied to the FBI about lying about shooting her. This is the sort of thing where you wonder, what is training going to do? Surely these officers were trained not to lie, and they did it anyway. And that's why after-the-fact accountability from the federal government, which, by the way, the federal DOJ was established purposefully, particularly for this, to vindicate the rights of minority Americans when state and local governments wouldn't do it. And so the DOJ really lived up to its creed today and exposed a really big problem that, you know, is not limited to Louisville, but is national in scope.
Tamika, on that point, we talk a lot on this show what happens when officers lie, when they make things up, and I keep telling people it's a huge problem, and for them to listen to Garland and Clarke talk about them meeting in a parking garage to pull their lies together, and we've seen other stories where officers lie, and I've always said the moment a cop lies on the police report, it should be the automatic firing.
Absolutely. And the scary thing about it, though, is that meetup in the garage happens often. It's happening across the nation. And we know that because it has been uncovered several times that officers have lied on reports. But this particular lie in terms of the search warrant, it caused a young woman to be killed and a young man's life to be traumatized forever. We cannot forget Kenny Walker was there, her boyfriend, and what has now happened to him and his life since this all took place. Janiyah Palmer, her younger sister, could have been home that day. In fact, her room was riddled with bullets, but she was out of town and was not there when this incident occurred. Tamika Palmer could have lost 2 daughters that night. It's really tragic. And today is so important because there were naysayers, people who told us that Breonna Taylor was a criminal, and that, she had no business, or that Kenny had no business firing a shot, that he fired at police. He didn't fire at police. He fired at criminals. He fired a warning shot at people who were at his door that had not announced themselves, and they had lied to get the ability to be there in the first place. And so this is vindication for our movement. It's vindication for Tamika Palmer and Breonna Taylor's family. And we need more of this. And we have to protect Kristen Clarke at all costs, because just like there are people who love and appreciate what happened today, and all she did was her job. She didn't do a favor. She didn't do anything, that is illegal. Mm-hmm. She did her job. And we know that just as much as there are people who appreciate the work that was done with the Department of Justice, there are people who hate it as well. There's a report that is going around talking about the amount of white supremacists who are in law enforcement, infiltrators within law enforcement. And law enforcement includes the Department of Justice, by my estimation. So this is a very important day, but it also brings up a lot of the sickness, the illness that is embedded in our system.
And Somil, one of the things that Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, said a couple of weeks ago at the Rock Nation Social Justice Conference, he said we need to continue to see more protests because that puts pressure on those DAs and prosecutors to do their job. And the reality is here. There were continuous protests. The story was dying out. What Tamika and Linda Sarsour and Tiffany Lofton and others, they were there joining with Black Lives Matter and others on the ground. And they were getting criticized for it. But what people need to understand, this is why protest, mobilization, organization matters, because it keeps the stories alive and it puts the pressure on the feds to also step up and to truly investigate.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely right. We like to think of these actors as detached robots. They are people who respond to pressure, political pressure. They are political animals. They're elected. They respond to elections. It is absolutely right that a head of civil rights division like Kristen Clarke, who would respond to that pressure in the right way, and this is the right response.
Yeah. And if I could just jump in on
Tamika, last question for you. Tamika, last question for you. I want you to speak to that, but also this. We talk about why elections matter, and it's a bunch of people out there who are sitting at home right now. They're frustrated. They're saying, you know what? We don't like what Biden has done thus far, what Democrats have done thus far. This is what we know. If this was the Donald Trump Department of Justice, we would not be having this conversation right now. And what we're dealing with now going into November is that we're seeing local DAs, progressive DAs who are on the ballot, and it matters to get them in office as well. And so people have to understand you may not have everything that you want, but trust me, there is a counter to what the current DOJ, because if it was the Barr DOJ or the Jeff Sessions DOJ, we would not be having any accountability for police officers.
Absolutely. I mean, elections matter. And there are many people who challenge us every day. Why did we support Joe Biden? And of course, he wasn't my top choice. And you and I discussed this many times. But we knew that we were looking at an imminent threat. in the re-election, the possible re-election of Donald Trump. Let me just say, though, on this Daniel Cameron piece, it is so important for us to underscore what happened here. It's not just a botched investigation. He lied. Daniel Cameron has actually committed criminal acts because the jurors who sat through his presentation, the presentation by his office in this case, they came forward, if we remember, to say that they were never presented with charges for the murder of Breonna Taylor, that they never had an opportunity to bring charges against those officers, and that if they were presented with anything of the sort, they would have used it as an opportunity to bring these officers up and to get accountability for these officers. And he came out and said that the jurors decided that there were no charges for these officers. So that means that he lied. He is an obstructionist. He did not want to see. I mean, you look at all the details that the Department of Justice found, and you're telling me that the Attorney General, who was in the same state, was unable to find anything. It has been public record, Roland, that the warrant it was not true, that the information in the warrant was untrue, right? Because the first story they told was that the postmaster said that Jamarcus, I think his name is Jamarcus, the young man who was the sort of the center of this entire situation, that he was receiving packages at Breonna Taylor's house, that she was getting several packages and that they were suspicious. But what we know is that the postmaster came forward after that report was released saying that they had not in any way determined that suspicious packages were being delivered to Breonna's house. And so if you couldn't even find Dan Cameron something in that, is problematic, and it tells me that he was involved in a cover-up.
All right, Tamika Mallory, Untold Freedom, Somil Trivedi with ACLU. I thank both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roland.
Right now, we'll talk to Betty Baye. She's a longtime columnist in Louisville and one of our esteemed members of NABJ. We're here in Las Vegas for our national convention. Betty, you've been talking to folks in Louisville all day. It's been a huge reaction in that city to today's announcement by the Department of Justice.
Exactly, Roland. I understand that the protesters were back at Justice Square, downtown Louisville, and Breonna's mother was there, her aunt and her sister, and the people of Louisville, the protesters, feel like they have been vindicated, even though the work is still to be done. And I got a statement that the Urban League put out, and then they clearly at the top said Breonna Taylor's life has always mattered. It mattered to her mother, it mattered to her family, it mattered to the Louisville Urban League. And every protester who raised their voice with us and put their safety and security on the line in her name. We are still reeling from today's Department of Justice announcement for the indictment of the 4 police officers for their role in the unlawful killing of Breonna Taylor and the subsequent cover-up. What they say is the question now is we want to know how state officials investigating Breonna Taylor's case and the federal government could be so far apart on the outcome. What information did our Attorney General have? Where did he get it? And what did he present to the grand jury? We want to know the exact reasons for recusals and why some agencies were involved in the process, were not involved in the process. With the exception of the interim police chief, Yvette Gentry, a black woman who had the courage to step in and fire the officers involved, the people in Kentucky responsible for seeking out justice, they stood still.
Give us a sense of, again, what this has been like in Louisville since her death, just the rage among African Americans.
Well, the one thing that they say, the trauma is still there in the city. And the people are still angry about it. They feel like they were not heard, that this decision today was part of what they can, that they finally feel like they're being heard. But they were real clear. And this is what the Urban League said, and I agree. They said justice for Breonna Taylor is not complete. There is more to come from the Department of Justice. There is more work to be done in this city. But today, the city of Louisville, the protesters, and the friends of Breonna Taylor are grateful for what has been done. And they still are trying to understand what is it that our black Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, saw,
Republican,
did not see, Republican who wants to be governor of Kentucky. They want to know why Breonna Taylor, why he could not find what the feds were able to find. What was it? She said it's either, the people are saying it's either a cover-up or he was incompetent or corrupt. And one of the things about it, I'm looking at a young man who's here working with the students here who covered those protests on the ground. Stefan Dingle from our WLKY affiliate anchor there, he was out in the streets with the people. The anger was palpable. So today, I think the protesters feel vindicated at this moment, but they know the work still has to be done. So Louisville people, and those of us, and this is very important, justice, we have to say, today, while we are grateful for what has been done, we will forever say Breonna's name, but we ask that every person who held the line with us today, vote as if your very life depends on it. Because it's what you said earlier, Roland. These are not inconsequential elections. We have to be up on it when it's the state attorney general, whoever it is, to make the difference. And we are so grateful to the Justice Department for doing that, what was not done by our state officials, including our black attorney general, who disappointed us. And the one officer that he did find guilty was found not guilty, but he got prosecuted for shooting at drywall for the people next door. But nobody was held accountable for killing Breonna Taylor. And so her mother, her fiance, her family has grieved enough. And I think the people of Louisville don't want another mother to have to grieve the way Breonna's family. So I think the city of Louisville can thank all of the people who came from outside of our city to really help us to deal with this issue.
All right. Anybody, always good to see you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?